Texas Congressman Ron Paul is taking his third run at the White House in 2012. During his maiden voyage in 1988, Paul ran as a libertarian.
We think the government should be much smaller. If government is small, then you don't need an income tax.
In 2008, Paul was 20 years older, a sitting congressman from Texas, a Republican, and still a small government guy.
I have never voted for a tax increase, never will, but the tax issue is only one half of it. You can easily pledge not to raise taxes, but you have to cut spending.
The man has certainly been consistent, but the times have changed, so these days Paul commands a larger audience willing to back him up with big bucks. He's been called the intellectual godfather of the Tea Party. Not a bad title to hang your hat on this primary season. The latest CNN poll of Republicans shows Ron Paul running second among announced and likely presidential candidates. High flying for a candidate who 3 years ago finished with only 3% of the delegates needed to win his party's nomination. He says people used to laugh at him. They are not anymore. Congressman Ron Paul is next. Joining me now, Republican presidential candidate, Congressman Ron Paul. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. Let's talk about a couple of things that were out there this week. The debt ceiling. The House rejected raising the debt ceiling in what seemed like a pressure move as opposed to a final move. Will there be a deal to raise the debt ceiling this month?
Well, I don't think anybody has an absolute answer to that, but I have my suspicions, and I would bet on that there will be.
And much to your unhappiness.
Sure. I mean, I came into the Congress a good many years ago, and my goal was to shrink the size of government and balance our budget, pay the bills, have sound money, and live within our means and mind our own business. And I haven't done a very good job. It seems like we're going in the wrong direction.
Well, how much of the House vote, the House rejecting any increase in the debt ceiling until there is a deal to cut something in spending, of government spending, how much of that is real and how much of it is a game of chicken? Because what we're told is the economy will implode if we don't raise this debt ceiling. So is this now in the gamesmanship stage rather than the serious stage?
100% gamesmanship. I mean, they're not serious. If they thought there was a problem, they would, you know, cut the spending and go down to business. But no, they're not serious. It's who's going to get the blame and who's going to get the power and who's going to get the political benefits and who won't have to have their budget cut. And that's what it's all about. But it'll come down to the wire, and they'll pass it because they will beat the drums of fear. That's how we get things done in Washington. Whether it's on foreign policy, you know, they're about to attack us, and they're going to bomb us with nuclear weapons, and they get Congress to do things.
And in the end, what do you think would happen if it didn't pass? Because you're right, we're told that economic recovery would be threatened. Do you believe that, if the debt ceiling was not raised?
It depends on how it's done. If it was a sign that we were getting our house in order, it might restore a lot of confidence. It might restore confidence in our dollar. Our dollar may go up because, hey, maybe they're serious this time. But if it's just sort of a mistake and they missed it a week or two and something like that, it could be very negative. But if it was part of a plan to change things, yes, I think it could be a very positive thing. But the big thing is, if we continue to do what we're doing and we raise the debt limit, what they don't want to think about is where we're going, because they say it could be bad, and there could be some difficult circumstances on delaying payments. But delaying payments is nothing like not paying with real money, because governments always pay their bills. They never default by not paying bills. They always default by paying off with junk money. And we're already doing this. They're worrying about a default. The default is on the average person today because their inflation rate is high. They've lost their jobs, and so we're defaulting all the time. The default is just who's going to get punished the most: the people who got bailed out on Wall Street and somebody you know, that owns our debt, or will it once again be the middle class and default on them with just printing money?
What about the argument, though, that if we should default, it will drive up interest rates, and if you want a car, if you want to buy a house, you'll be paying double-digit interest rates? Doesn't it, in turn, affect the people you're talking about on the ground on Main Street trying to just do their jobs if you don't raise that debt ceiling?
That's why it's so difficult. And after 30 or 40 years of having no restraint on spending and printing money, you don't click a switch and correct that. So yes, interest rates may go up, but you want the market to work. You don't want a central economic planning. That's our problem, because the central economic planners that get to fix the interest rates also monetizes all the debt that the contract. So people need to realize that if we're serious about this, interest rates may go up, but maybe we'll go back to work too.
The vice president and a group he's working with, the Republicans and Democrats, says that he's going to find well above $1 trillion worth of cuts in his group that's trying to find a way to go at this debt. How well above $1 trillion in cuts would it take for you to actually vote for an increase in the debt ceiling?
I'm not going to vote to increase the debt. I didn't vote for that, and I don't believe in it. But what's he talking about, $1 trillion? In what period of time? 1 year or 10 years? In this year's...
It's peanuts, huh? Is what you're trying to say?
It means nothing. The only thing that counts is this year. And our obligation, when you add up the deficit, the obligation to the borrowing of the trust funds, plus the entitlement obligation, $5 trillion this year. $1 trillion over 5 years. People, the market shouldn't believe us for a minute. That's just a joke.
Congressman, let me turn to your presidential politics here. This is your third time around, and I think a lot of people know that you engender great passion from your followers. You win a lot of those straw polls when Republicans come to meet. You've proven that you can raise money, and yet there are a lot of people that say, you know, it's an interesting conversation, but doesn't have much of a chance to win. You've been around a long time. I know you know what the odds are. Why do you run?
Well, I'm not so sure I do know what the odds are, because I never thought I could ever get elected to Congress. You know, then I thought, well, if I vote the way I believe, I'll never get reelected. So, you know, you never know what can happen. And I know what the odds are. But the one thing is that's very encouraging is that I see a fantastic movement at the grassroots. You hear from supporters, but the whole country is moving. The attitude toward the endless, undeclared, silly wars that we fight that are bankrupting us, the silliness of the Federal Reserve printing money when we need so-called wealth, the deficits that are uncontrolled. So mainstream is now thinking about these things. Before, mainstream was deficits don't matter, print money when you need it, endless wars, personal privacy didn't mean anything. But believe me, mainstream is moving in the direction that I have been talking about for a long time, and therefore nobody knows what the outcome will be in this election. During the last campaign, I knew what was happening. You know, they mocked me for my foreign policy, and they laughed at my monetary policy. No more. No more the people coming over here. So I would say whatever happens is going to be good, because the people have woke up.
I want to ask you to size up the Republican race for me a little bit. What do you think of Sarah Palin?
Oh, I'm not much into sizing up anybody. Well, I can size them up as a group. I think so far most of them represent the status quo, you know, and not any. I think they're shifting a little bit because of the political pressure. But who's saying bring all the troops home? Who's saying that we need sound money and we ought to believe in the Constitution? Who wants to get rid of the Patriot Act? Who believes in property rights? You know, they're going to modify their position, but they represent the status quo. And this is what excites so many people now. They're sick of the status quo.
Let me try and put it to you this way. In 2008, you did not endorse your party's ticket, Republican Party ticket, of John McCain and Sarah Palin. You endorsed 4 others who are running on various platforms. Looking at this Republican field right now, is there anyone in it that you can already say that this person's on the ticket? There's no way Ron Paul will support him or her?
Well, if you ask me to promise that I would vote whoever the candidate is, no, I wouldn't do it, because my supporters wouldn't understand it, because they want to change it. If they represent the status quo and nothing I believe in, but who knows how things may evolve. So it depends on the candidate. If they're starting to say, we need sound money, we need balanced budgets, we need to cut, we need to bring our troops home, we need to deregulate this economy, and we need to believe in personal freedom, I would give it serious consideration if they're serious on those matters.
So you could see Mitt Romney's platform developing into something that you could support?
Gee, I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to have a conversation with him.
Okay.
So maybe, hopefully, I have always high hopes.
You're quite the optimist. Quite the optimist. And finally, do you think, because I mean, I think that to assume that they could sign on to a lot of the things that you're talking about, Tim Pawlenty or Mitt Romney or Sarah Palin or others who are in the race, is a little far-fetched. Do you think there's ever a time that you would say, you know what, thanks Republican Party, but time for a third party bid?
Well, you know, I did that one time in a third party, and we don't have democracy in this country. It's so biased. If you're in a third party, I can't get in debates as a third party candidate. When I did it as a third party, I spent over half my money just trying to get on the ballots. So we don't have a good democratic process. What happens if you come to the conclusion, as millions of Americans have, the parties aren't different. They're all the same. The monetary policy stays the same. The welfare system stays the same. The foreign policy stays the same. They get pretty disgusted. So there is but one party. So people who want to participate, they more or less have to get into one of the major parties. A lot of our people have gotten into the Republican Party, and I've already noticed a difference in the appearance of Republican. They say, will you come talk to the Republican Party? I thought, oh, well, you know, they didn't invite me before, so I go in, and they're very friendly. Some of the old-timers are there, but they're twice the size they are because all our people come and they're part of the Republican Party. So there is a transition going on right now.
So you see changing the Republican Party rather than
I think that's what many of the supporters I have opted out for, and they see that I've worked in the Republican Party, but that doesn't mean we join them. We get in the Republican Party in hopefully using that as a vehicle to bring about the positive, peaceful changes that we want.
Presidential candidate Ron Paul, thank you so much for joining us, Congressman.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.